The National Assembly has approved the securitization of Nigeria's ways and means loans, currently estimated at about 22.7 trillion naira, paving the way for the legislation of the controversial debt. The ways and means refer to a provision that allows the government to borrow from the Central Bank of Nigeria if it needs short-term or emergency finance to fund delayed government expected cash receipts or fiscal deficits. Now, provisions in the Act cap monetary financing of fiscal deficits at 5% of the prior year's revenues, but this has been breached by the Buhari government. So to legalize the breach, the government presented a bill to the National Assembly to approve the conversion of the loan into a national debt, and the lawmakers went ahead to grant that approval. So joining me from London, United Kingdom, is Gospel Obele, Chief Economist, Streetnomics Limited. Thank you so much, Gospel, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lekan. Good morning.
So with this approval by the National Assembly and Nigeria's debt portfolio that is in the tune of trillions, would you say that the current legislature is merely a rubber stamp for the Muhammadu Buhari administration?
Well, to be very honest, all we see right now are just layers and layers of reactive measures to sort of cover, protect, and keep the state of play running. At the beck and call of this is the fact that there's a severe revenue crisis, and that's what the challenge is to a very large extent. And that's what happens again when you have a long history of fiscal indiscipline, and when you're not ready to right the wrongs of the past, to sort of create some form of stability and sustainability for the future as well. So you realize that all these stakeholders are trying to juggle the path, just to keep the eyes on the ball, as the case may be, and all that. And that's what we find here. It's quite pathetic that it's had to come to this, putting up a request to convert the ways and means loans that have been taken, as assets and all the likes. And the government is just looking for a more quote-unquote sustainable way around patching the problems that already exist at a very concerned level. So this is not in any way sustainable. This is not an intelligent policy solution. Again, like I've always said, this is largely reactive and will cause more harm in the future, than what we have now. Let's not forget that we have a new administration coming who would inherit a lot of structural mess, and at the layers of the structural mess, a lot of very misaligned, incoherent policies to manage or keep the state of play running. So it's really a pathetic one, to be very honest with you.
So, but then would you have preferred that the economy collapses? Because what the federal government said, it had to do that so as to prevent government revenue shortfall, as the case may be. And you also mentioned it. And we understand that, fine, there have been issues around government spendings and excessiveness on that side. But don't you think that there's a bit of justification on the side of the government to ensure that the economy does not go down the drain, as the case may be, by having to go through the ways and means to get the necessary funds it needs, in a way, to fund its administration? Don't you think that there's a bit of justification in that?
I mean, yeah, there's always a sense in it, to be very honest with you, because government has to look for a way to finance its deficit. Government has to look for a way to, service its debt, and there's always a lag window. Even when you look for when you try to lend money from the World Bank, IMF, and all these guys, Paris Club and Co. There's always a lag window, pending when those monies will be delivered and when you can kickstart projects. As a result, there has to be some funding to close those lag windows. There has to be some funding to keep capital projects running and all that. And that's where it sort of makes sense. But it would have really, really made sense in terms of validity of reasoning if you have all your structural bits at least informed. Not 100% yet, but maybe 65 to 80% to the very least. But what's happening right now is that you're making these big ticket decisions on the grounds of a lot of fiscal indiscipline and structural inconsistency. The argument is that so we don't incur more monies, when it comes to debt servicing in the future. So as a result, we need to securitize these assets. So in as much as that sounds valid and makes sense, the catch here is this: whether you securitize or not, there are prospects and chances for higher debt portfolios in the future with the current path of fiscal indiscipline and the fact that we cannot even identify what's capital and from what's recurrent and we cannot keep government lean. We cannot cut down waste. We cannot prioritize on, strategic investment in sectors that would, give us a high return, to scale revenue mobilization and all that. We're not externally facing our market approach. We're not a productive and competitive nation, in context to how we relate to other countries and other markets. We are heavily consumption driven and import driven. So these are strong blocks that would frustrate the sustainability of these policies in the mid to long term. So it may make sense, but it's very short termist, very, very, it's just a little drop in a very big ocean of root causal challenges that needs to be dealt with if anybody is really serious about reducing debt burdens or debt service burdens, in the nearest future.
So now that the government has exceeded the 5% threshold as stipulated by the CBN Act 2007, what is the implication of that? And do you think that the incoming administration might also toe that line? Should we be scared about that?
I mean, the incoming administration is coming with a lot of uncertainty, trust me. But one thing we know very much for sure is that it's going to be very aggressive on revenue mobilization. Because, again, like I mentioned, that's the root causal challenge of what we're faced with. So there's going to be a lot of revenue mobilization from the incoming government. There's going to be a lot of trying to garner stakeholders' interest together to facilitate growth and development of sectors of some sort, and maybe some level of managed capitalism, so as to retain some level of government control in deciding who gets what, and also facilitating interest on those bits. So there's a lot of uncertainties and dynamics as to how the new administration will play out. But the catch is that the body language doesn't necessarily mean that they are very much aligned with the policies and interests of the current outgoing administration. So again, it brings into concern what's the future of, or what's the question around sustainability of this particular policy by the Buhari administration. However, it's a developing story. And I would really hope that the coming administration would look out would fix more of the structural challenges we have and try as much as possible to reduce these short-termist policy patchy approaches that will literally hurt the economy in the mid to long term. But then again, it's also going to come at a cost, in the real sense of things. So we see a lot of policy clashes, a lot of inconsistency as well with what's happening right now. But we really hope that we could find a middle ground on the lines of what's of interest, both to Nigerians, both to the incoming administration, and what the outgoing administration are currently seeking to do.
All right, let's just quickly take a look at the terms of the securitization, and I'd like you to help us break that down. Now, according to the latest data by DMO, the tenure of the securitization is 40 years with a moratorium on the principal for 3 years and an interest rate of about 9% per annum. I'd like you to just break that down and help us understand that and what implication that would also have.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very, in more recent times, we've seen how the finance minister and stakeholders like that have been speaking so much around securitizing loans. There's been a heavy emphasis on that. And that's not really, and it's interesting because the emphasis has been on that because Nigerians and analysts and the World Bank and other institutions have been very heavy more recently on the fact that our debt service is not sustainable, the subsidy conversation is not sustainable. There's just a lot of clarion call around the fact that Nigeria is at a very bad, emergency state of things, and it could self-destruct. So as a result of that narrative and the pressure around those narratives, the government has sort of looked for a way around, tempering down these conversations. So a lot of these loans and assets will run towards 10 to 20, 30, 40-year period. Yes, I mean, they may have mentioned at single interest rate, but in the real ideal situation of things, where in Nigeria can you really boast of a single interest rate engagement? Again, let's not forget that the global financial system is really on the battle of interest rates right now. Inflation is currently doubling in many economies that it almost hasn't happened in 5 decades, like the UK. So there's a lot of inconsistency and uncertainty around how interest rates will play out in the coming years. As a result, worries heavily on what the future of the securitization of the assets will look like. And again, in context to what the new administration will do about them, in terms of facilitating a more sustainable approach going forward. Again, if that's more priority for them. So, quite honestly, there are a lot of uncertainties around it. The only fastest, surest approach is to deal with the fundamental problem, which is not the fact that we are paying a lot of money as debt service. or subsidy and all the like. But in the fact that we're not generating enough revenue, we do not have a properly structured, diversified revenue base as an economy. We've not exported the non-oil bit. We've not facilitated the service sector to earn more foreign exchange receipts. We've not made the most of Nigerians who are in diaspora in terms of investment and all of those dynamics. So until we begin to fix this market, institutional, and financial questions, I do not think that we can rise above both the narrative and the seemingly short-term reactive-driven policies that are being introduced right now.
All right, to just wrap this up, Gospel, the DMO said that there's no need to fret and there's no need to be scared because the securitization would not necessarily lead to new loans being given to the federal government. And he said that they would not be given new monies or new funds, as it were, to the federal government because that has already been provided for. So is it that the approval that the federal government was seeking from the lawmakers was just a mere formality? And is that how the process works?
Although I didn't get the later part of the question, but top of mind is the fact that you would always expect that public sector institutions will come out to say there is no need to be scared, all right? And that's because there's also a PR and an outlook strategy to how these narratives work, because the wrong messaging, the wrong perception can really can cripple the economy or self-destruct the economy in 24 hours. So you're also looking at the fact that this particular government will be out in a couple of weeks, and they're trying to engage them from damage control tactics that they can, and as a result, leave the bulk of the work to the next administration. So the big ticket question is how much aligned is the next administration with the current administration in line with facilitating policies that is going forward. Whilst doing that, dealing with the structural issues, that's going to be the big question. And then how do you roll out these bonds and these assets? How do you decide who gets what and why, and the future of that engagement going forward? So there are a lot of complex questions that I do not think, in all honesty, this current administration has provided the platform and leeway, to facilitate and provide answers to. I think it's just a combination of managing PR, engaging damage control, that once you're out of office, the next administration will take it on.
A big tax in the hands of the next administration coming in, and we get to see how they will be able to solve this issue of financial quagmire that Nigeria has been enmeshed in. But then we want to sincerely appreciate your presence, Gospel, for joining us.